Mrs. Kraken stood hunched before the whiteboard, her 70-year-old frame supported by a weathered wooden cane that clicked against the linoleum floor with each deliberate step. Sparse gray hair clung desperately to her scalp in uneven patches, revealing pale pink skin beneath where follicles had surrendered to time's relentless march. Her pointed nose jutted forward like a ship's prow, while her crossed brown eyes struggled to focus on the mathematical equations she scrolled across the board with trembling fingers. The navy cardigan draped over her shoulders bore chalk dust from countless lessons, and her sensible black shoes squeaked softly as she pivoted to face her 7th grade mathematics class. Today we shall explore the fascinating realm of algebraic expressions, Mrs. Kraken announced, her voice crackling like autumn leaves. She tapped the board with her cane, creating a sharp percussion that echoed through the fluorescent-lit classroom. 23 students sat arranged in neat rows, their desks bearing the battle scars of previous academic campaigns, carved initials, eraser marks, and the occasional doodle of questionable artistic merit. Among the sea of adolescent faces sat Johnny Martinez, a 12-year-old boy with warm brown skin and unruly black hair that refused to acknowledge the existence of combs. His dark eyes sparkled with mischief behind wire-rimmed glasses, and his red polo shirt bore evidence of his hurried breakfast, a small orange juice stain on the left sleeve. He slouched in his chair, fidgeting with a mechanical pencil while Mrs. Kraken began her mathematical discourse. When we encounter variables such as x and y, we must remember that these symbols represent unknown quantities, Mrs. Kraken continued, her crossed eyes attempting to scan the classroom. Suddenly, a voice piped up from somewhere in the room, "But why can't we just call them Bob and Susan instead?" The comment triggered a ripple of suppressed giggles throughout the classroom. Mrs. Kraken's pointed nose twitched with irritation as she whirled around, her cane striking the floor with decisive authority. "Johnny Martinez," she barked, her voice rising to a pitch that could shatter laboratory beakers. "How dare you interrupt my lesson with such frivolous commentary? Mathematics is a serious discipline that requires respect and concentration." Johnny's eyes widened with genuine confusion as he raised both hands in a gesture of innocence. "But Mrs. Kraken, I didn't say anything," Johnny protested, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of bewildered sincerity. His classmates turned to stare at him, some nodding in agreement while others shrugged with uncertainty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the classroom as tension mounted between teacher and student. Mrs. Kraken resumed her lesson with renewed determination, explaining the intricacies of solving for unknown variables while her cane tapped in a regular rhythm against the floor. "When we isolate the variable on one side of the equation," she began, only to be interrupted once again by another voice, "sounds like the variable needs some alone time." This comment provoked another wave of barely contained laughter from the students. The elderly teacher's face flushed crimson as she spun around with surprising agility for someone of her advanced years and physical limitations. "Johnny Martinez," she shrieked, her crossed eyes blazing with fury. "That is quite enough of your disruptive behavior. You will cease these inappropriate interruptions immediately." Her wooden cane trembled in her arthritic grip as she pointed accusingly at the bewildered boy. "Mrs. Kraken, I swear I'm not saying anything," Johnny insisted, his voice cracking slightly with frustration and growing anxiety. He gestured helplessly at his classmates, seeking support for his claims of innocence. Several students nodded vigorously, confirming that Johnny's lips had remained sealed during both mysterious interruptions. The classroom atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the standoff continued. Despite the mounting evidence of Johnny's innocence, Mrs. Kraken pressed forward with her mathematical exposition, determined to maintain classroom order through sheer force of will. She explained the concept of coefficients and constants, her voice growing more strained with each passing minute. Then, as if summoned by some mischievous spirit, another voice chimed in. Math sounds like a foreign language that nobody actually wants to learn. This final interruption proved to be the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, sending Mrs. Kraken into a fury that would have impressed ancient Greek dramatists. "Johnny Martinez, you have exhausted my patience beyond all reasonable limits," she declared, her cane striking the floor with thunderous emphasis. "Remove yourself from my classroom immediately and report to the principal's office for this unconscionable display of disrespect." Johnny gathered his belongings with resigned acceptance, stuffing his notebook and pencils into his backpack while his classmates watched in sympathetic silence. His shoulders sagged with the weight of unjust accusation as he shuffled toward the door, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The unfairness of the situation settled over him like a heavy blanket, but he maintained his dignity despite the circumstances. As Johnny reached for the door handle, preparing to exit the classroom and face whatever consequences awaited him in the principal's office, a cheerful voice suddenly called out, "Goodbye, Johnny. Thanks for taking the blame." The entire class turned in unison, their heads swiveling like synchronized owls, to locate the source of this farewell message. There, in a large glass terrarium positioned on the windowsill behind Mrs. Kraken's desk, sat an extraordinary chameleon whose iridescent scales shifted through a spectacular rainbow of colors: emerald green, sapphire blue, and golden yellow. The mystical creature's independently moving eyes surveyed the classroom with obvious amusement, while its long tongue flicked out to catch a passing fly. Mrs. Kraken's jaw dropped open in stunned silence as she realized her grave error, while Johnny couldn't help but grin at the chameleon who had inadvertently become his unlikely classroom ally, transforming a moment of injustice into an unforgettable lesson about assumptions and the importance of investigating before assigning blame.